It is normal for us to mature and age. It is not normal for us to become sick. It is not inevitable. And if it happens, it's your fault.
Dave Asprey, father of the biohacking movement, founder of Bulletproof Coffee, serial entrepreneur, and New York Times bestselling author.
You have way more control over your biology and over your state than you think you do. Here's the tests that can change your life.
He spent over $2 million on his quest to live to 180.
People with higher testosterone levels, they have less chance of dying as they age. Yet many people are afraid of testosterone.
Isn't it considered bad?
Hack your way to increase performance, build vitality, and achieve longevity.
Is this a biohack or not? Intermittent fasting.
I'm a huge fan of intermittent fasting. Problem is,
Stem cells.
they can be absolutely amazing. However,
Ozempic.
here's the deal with Ozempic.
Along the biohacking journey, I've seen over and over that what works for one person often does not work for another. If you aren't quite getting the results you're aiming for, that's okay. Part of biohacking is making mistakes and learning what to do if something doesn't work or gives us the outcome we expected. Before throwing something away and deeming it useless though, it is important to give your hacks enough time to work. Upgrades in biohacks are often shortcuts for those of us who want more results in less time. But sometimes we need to maintain a bit of patience. Remember, you didn't gain those extra 50 pounds in a day, so you are sure as heck aren't going to lose them in a day either. The direct quote from the book, and I love this quote because it kind of counters some of the popular beliefs around biohacking. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
A lot of people hear the word biohacking and it triggers what their fifth grade teacher told them. It's not okay to cheat. And it's the same thing. We have professional athletes right now who are in their 40s, and because puritanical beliefs about actually getting results are in place, they're required to age more quickly than they normally would and to stop competing. When it's simple, most Americans have the ability to keep their testosterone levels at those of a 25-year-old because you stay younger. This is for men and women, by the way. But not athletes, because it might be cheating. So the people who resist biohacking, it's not fair, or my favorite, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Actually, there is. I've had many of them, right? So what it comes down to is fear and fear of being judged. The reality is that all of us want the same thing. It's in the definition of biohacking when I wrote it. The definition is the art and science of changing the environment around you and inside of you so you have control of your own biology. And what do you want? Control? Okay, maybe you want to be the smartest person in the world. You want to have focus. You want to be just way less stressed, right? And you want to lose weight the way I had to lose 100 pounds. Actually, I needed all that. Maybe you just want to be a lot younger than you are, or you want to stay the age you are. Or maybe you want to be a balloon animal, just like the biggest person on the planet with the most muscle mass. Or maybe you just want 3 balls. It doesn't matter, man. I support you, right? So different goals, different people. But the idea that there is an efficient and elegant way to get there, and there's you should suffer to get there, which is pretty much the history of exercise and dieting and most other things. I fundamentally reject the idea that hard work always gets results. It's because you know and I know many people who work really hard and don't get results. I worked my ass off trying to lose that 100 pounds, 90 minutes a day, 6 days a week for 18 months straight, half weights, half cardio, low fat, low calorie diet. And I still had a 46-inch waist. I still weighed 300 pounds, and I could max out all but 2 of the machines at the gym. So what happened? It didn't work. And it didn't work because I believed hard work got results. It's not true. Effectiveness gets results. Hard work is for people who haven't figured out how to be effective. Biohacking is more effective than a lot of modern medical techniques. And it's more effective, and I'll piss off the trainers, it's more effective than the training we've been doing the same way. Pick up rocks. Oh, let's put the rocks into little iron plates. What? That's all we've done in the last 200 years? Or let's run away from tigers. And all forms of exercise, except in the last few years, have been variations on that. Run in place on a treadmill from a tiger. Great. And yes, there's yoga. And there is sports science. In fact, I work with sports scientists and I talk with them. And We now know what works and what most people are doing doesn't work. So biohacking is just, hey, try what's supposed to work. When it doesn't, measure it and do something else. And magically, you will find the recipe for you. It's 100% personalized. And it's one of the reasons that biohacking has become a $10 billion industry since I had the first conference 10 years ago.
Beautiful. And I'm curious about one of the things that you said in the starting, which is most Americans can have the testosterone, men and women, of a 25-year-old. That's the first time I'm hearing anybody say that. I'm curious about what does that mean and what's that?
Well, testosterone replacement therapy is now shown to reduce your odds of all-cause mortality and aging. In other words, people with higher testosterone levels, we'll go with men first, we'll talk about men and women, they have less chance of dying as they age. Yet many people are afraid of testosterone. It's one of the many longevity techniques in my big New York Times bestselling book on how to live to at least 180. And it's a simple thing to do. You go to the doctor or you go to Mexico. There are now companies that'll do it for you online, and you can get it sometimes $50 a month. It's not terribly expensive. That's at the low end. It depends on what cheats you want to do. Sometimes it's $500 a month if you're going to a high-end doctor, but it's not that expensive compared to Starbucks.
Hold on. So your testosterone replacement therapy is TRT.
Yeah.
Right? And I have always heard, and so that's why it's blowing my mind a little bit, right? And of course I've read the book, but still it's blowing my mind a little bit. Isn't it considered bad?
Only by idiots.
Why is it so popular then? You shouldn't do TRT. It blows
It's not
you
so
up.
popular.
It kills
There's
you.
millions of people doing testosterone replacement. I've lectured at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine in front of like thousands of doctors. They're all doing testosterone replacement therapy. The reason is because humans are low on testosterone right now anyway. If you are 20 years old right now, you have the testosterone levels that your grandfather would have had 30 years ago. So we've poisoned you. It's in your food. It's in the Axe body spray. It's in the scented candles. It's in the glyphosate and many, many other endocrine disruptors that are in our environment. So we have a bunch of people walking around with low testosterone. So what should you do? Well, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to be natty. I'm going to be all natural. Newsflash. We're sitting under artificial lighting. We're breathing not outdoor air. We didn't eat all natural food that grew within 20 miles of where we live. There's nothing natural about anyone who claims they're natural. That's gone. Go live in a cave if you want to be natural. So what's the problem with just saying, you know what? I'm going to measure my levels. I'll put them to where they ought to be for a healthy young person. And I will keep them there until I'm 200 years old. And why would you do that? Because testosterone is a hormone of desire. Not desire just to go and be with someone. It's desire to make a difference in the world. Low testosterone means low dopamine, which means low motivation, which means low happiness, low joy. It means you're programmable. It makes you angry, cranky, and it turns you into a victim. So you have a moral obligation as a male of any age to measure your testosterone levels and do whatever is necessary to bring them up to the levels that make you feel good again so you can be of service to the world. And now let's talk about women. Women have more testosterone than estrogen, although estrogen is clearly the more famous of the hormones in women. So low estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone in women have effects that are bad for women. When perimenopause hits, for years they've said hormone therapy is bad, estrogen's bad, yet we've known for 20 years that bioidentical hormone replacement in women lowers their risk of getting heart attacks and dying. So it turns out that's so weird. In men and women, if we keep their hormones at healthy young people levels, they stay younger, they don't die, they have much higher quality of life, and they don't get sick as often. Why would the pharmaceutical industry not want us to do that? I can't imagine. Can you think of a reason?
They don't make money.
Oh, you mean sick people are more, I'm not going to say it's a conspiracy theory. I'll just tell you that understanding that it's okay to be on testosterone therapy when you're 30 if your levels are low. Did you try to eat some steak? Did you eat some egg yolks? Did you go to sleep on time for a while? Did you pick up some heavy things? If it's still not working, it's probably in your environment. And you should work on your detox pathways. That's part of biohacking. But if you do everything perfectly, there is still a very good chance, given the world we live in, that your levels will not be where they should be. So what are you going to do? You can be helpless. You can work really hard. Or you could do what I did when I was 26 years old. I went to an anti-aging doctor because I couldn't lose the weight because I felt like crap. I had brain fog. I had chronic fatigue syndrome, actually, and poisoning from toxic mold, and arthritis, and prediabetes. I was kind of sick. And I tried the normal stuff that's supposed to work. The doctor measures my testosterone. He calls me, and he says, Dave, I've got bad news for you. Your testosterone levels are lower than your mom's.
Oh my God.
I was obese.
Yeah.
When you're obese, you make a lot of estrogen in your white fat, and you make less testosterone. So I went on testosterone replacement therapy, and I've been on it all but about 3 years, and I was testing out the Bulletproof diet. And I'll tell you, if I do everything perfectly and don't travel all the time the way I do, I could keep my levels at about 700. I feel a lot better when they're at about 900, 950, and I inject testosterone. I've been doing it forever. I've been very public about it. And I'll go so far as to say, if you're listening to this and you haven't measured your testosterone levels, number one, you're doing life wrong. I don't care if you're a man or a woman, you need to know. Because if you don't have enough testosterone, you won't like your partner, and you won't like your job, and you won't like your life, and you won't be motivated to change them. Like, you have to have it. And yes, steak helps.
That's wonderful. And it's so interesting because I did go to a doctor and my testosterone levels are lower than they're expected to be. It's all good. I can be honest. It's fine. There's a question literally for you. And that's one of the reasons why I so wanted you to be on the podcast, because I want to learn myself.
Sure.
So I did go to my doctor and I looked at the number. I'm like, shouldn't I be taking it?
Yeah.
Because I was like, listen, it's not like I don't want to have kids, because that was one fear somebody gave me, is like, oh, you can't have kids after. So I was like, okay,
so
fine.
not real. I had 2 kids after being on testosterone.
Yeah, I have 2 kids. I don't plan to have more. I was like, I don't even have a risk of this, right? So I'm like, I'm fine taking, it's like a supplement in my head. It's like, I'm low. It's like, if you're low on vitamin, don't you take a vitamin supplement? You do. So it's kind of like that in my head.
Well, it should be like that for everyone.
And so I asked my doctor and they go, no.
You can
and that's where I was like confused. I was like, why is my doctor saying don't take testosterone?
It's easy because
get it.
you need a new doctor. I don't see the problem.
Of course.
You pay them for their advice, and then they do what you pay them to do.
Yeah.
And if you say, thanks for your advice, doc. My numbers are low. I'm feeling the effects of low testosterone. When I work out, I don't get results from my workout. Maybe there's libido issues, or just like I just don't feel like I got my mojo. Not just bedroom stuff. I mean mojo for life. I'd like you to treat my symptoms, not my labs, not the numbers. Mm-hmm. And if the doctor says, I won't do it, I have a white lab coat, you're like, enjoy your white lab coat at Goodwill. I'm going to another doctor. And just replace them. There are tens of thousands of doctors out there who will have a meaningful conversation with you about risks and benefits of testosterone. Mm-hmm. If you take testosterone all by yourself with no advice, your balls will shrink. Totally happens. Mm-hmm. You could say, well, I don't actually care about the cosmetic value of my balls, but from a fertility perspective, that's an issue. So there are natural and pharmaceutical ways to stop that from happening that most doctors who prescribe testosterone will happily do for you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And I just wanted to bring attention that there are doctors who say, no, you cannot have it and you shouldn't have it. And they'll give a valid reason of why.
So look at those doctors and ask them why they're fat. Mm-hmm. Ask them why they have man boobs, and ask them if they use testosterone. See what they say.
This one did not have any of those, but I hear you. I hear you, and I do agree with you.
There's so many good doctors out there who love their patients. They love healing. And there are other doctors.
They're uninformed, I feel, or they're ill-informed. Maybe not uninformed.
Uninformed or ill-informed. Some of them are ill-informed. But look, it's your job if you're a doctor. And I don't care if you're a primary care physician. Look, I was married to a doctor for 17 years. My best friends in the world are doctors of all flavors. Literally, I hang out in medical circles. And I have so much respect for medical school because I didn't go there. I know about mitochondrial biology and systems biology. And the doctors who pay attention to functional medicine and longevity, they're doing this, and they've been doing this for 30 years. I've been in the longevity field for 25 years at nonprofits, and this is a standard practice. So when a doctor, usually it's doctors who are just a few years out of medical school. They haven't seen patients fail enough times yet, and they sit there and like, and then, we're not going to do that. You're too young. I heard that in medical school, which was paid for entirely by big pharma. But by the way, if you're like, I'm feeling a little sad, they're not going to look at your testosterone. They're going to give you an antidepressant. Yeah. That is unacceptable. So these are not bad people for the most part. There are people who are uninformed, but you're paying for an expert. So find an expert.
When is it that you Or is there a path to really think about when to go to a doctor or when to go to a biohacker? Or how do you make that decision? Because you're so clear and so confident about it. And I know because you've studied so much
Right.
that you are confident in your approach. But say somebody listening to it, they're like, well, I don't know as much as Dave did. And what if I am telling my doctor, I need X, and my doctor tells me no? I'm now scared if I should do it or not. How do you think about it?
Here's what you do. You want to be friends with your doctor, and you don't want to be combative. When I was younger and the doctor told me vitamin C would kill me and offered me no help when my life was falling apart and I weighed 300 pounds and looked at me and said, maybe you should try to lose weight. I'm like, yeah, you too, buddy. But I already tried. Here's all the things I did. And he just looked at me like, no, you didn't. Like, he knew I was eating Snickers bars and lying. And he also knew, because they teach you this in medical school, that if you have 10 symptoms, which I did, that never happens. Therefore, you're crazy and it's hypochondriac disease. This was not the case. I was being poisoned by toxic mold, which affected my mitochondria and my hormones. There you go. But I got real angry and I just said, I'll go learn it all myself, just to be really straightforward. And when I came back to the medical system 4 years later, I sat down and I was really a dick. I looked at a doctor, her name was Christine, and I said, look, you're just a permission slip to me. Like, your whole profession has failed me. And I have one of these 7 conditions, and I want these labs from this vendor and these labs from this vendor, and here's my treatment plan for each of these things. Like, you guys aren't going to do it. I'm going to do this because I will not feel this crappy for the rest of my life. And to her credit, she didn't tell me to go screw myself. So thank you, Christine, if you're listening. And I deserve that because I was being rude. By the way, the lower your testosterone and the more toxic you are, the meaner you are to other people. And I was not in a good place, I'll tell you that. But she said, can I at least help you order which of those tests you're going to get? And she figured some stuff out around mold and Lyme disease and all that. And we started some treatment plans. So she was a doctor who listened to me. I was like, oh, wait, there's 2 kinds of doctors. There's the kinds of doctors who will partner with you and listen, and the kind of doctors who will command you. The people who command you, I'm sorry, Dr. Google is better than those doctors. It really is already. You can go to Google and do anything they can do. The doctors who will ask you questions, who've seen other patients, who will work with you and say, you know what, this doesn't make sense. Look at this lab. Are you feeling better? Let's raise the dose of that a little bit. Are those doctors cheap? No, they're more expensive. But with AI, it's coming for all of us to be easier and easier to become your own biohacker. So you could go back to where I've been at times in my life where 20% of my monthly income went towards just maintaining my health enough to keep my monthly income. And you can say, is this something I can do myself? It is. And so what do? You can order your lab tests online for anything you want to do right now, right? And you can say, I'm not an expert in testosterone. I'm just going to get a basic lab because I can see what the numbers are supposed to be because that's easy. And then if I know I have a problem, I'll go to the doctor. And if I don't, I'll wait till I know what the problem is, right? So this is something many people are doing. They're saying, I could go to my insurance company. I could go to this. I could spend a whole day lining stuff up at the doctor and filling out paperwork and calling insurance customer service reps. And they might pay for some percentage of my thing if it's covered. And at that point, what's the point of even doing it? And so we feel helpless and overwhelmed with paperwork and bureaucracy. And that's part of how it's designed. Or you could say, I'm going to save up $107. I'm going to find an online test for it. I'm going to see how I'm doing. And maybe I should go to bed on time. Maybe I'll eat more steak and butter and eggs, which are building blocks for testosterone. I'll take some more zinc. I'll eat a little bit of liver, right? Great. Test again in 6 months. Is your quality of life improving? If not, then you decide what's in my budget. Do I hire a doctor or do I go to Mexico? It's cheaper to go to Mexico.
So if somebody was, based on what you just said, let's say ordering their test, and testosterone is one of the tests, what are some of the tests that you recommend? Here are the 5 or 6 things that you should probably test for.
Here's the tests that can change your life. They're so important, and this is for everyone, especially if you're in your 20s. You want to get an advanced inflammation panel. This is going to include C-reactive protein. If this is high, your body is doing a terrible job of turning air and food into electricity, and it's making inflammation. That means that you have something wrong, probably an infection of some sort, but we need to figure out what's going on there, because if you're always inflamed, you're not going to feel good, and you're going to have all sorts of other performance problems. You'll feel anxious. It's not a good situation. If your homocysteine, which is the next lab test, is high, that means you have a problem with B vitamins, certain types of them, and you'll have a higher risk of stroke and heart attack and inflammation. It's easy to fix if you know what it is. And the third one is because You might have fallen for, just in the last 25 years, you have this bizarre low-fat segment that doesn't match all of the rest of human history. If you fell for that, you might have a fear of eating the healthiest foods on the planet, which is steak, eggs, and butter. So if you're afraid of those because fat, the data supports that those are good for you, but it's okay. Eat them for a little while and then get a test for something called LPPLA2. It's an enzyme that's released when the arteries in your body are inflamed. So if the butter you're eating is inflaming your arteries, which it isn't, then you'll have direct evidence of it. But after 14 years of sharing about biohacking online, and millions of people have lost millions of pounds on the bulletproof diet and bulletproof coffee and all that kind of stuff. I'm no longer with bulletproof. I'm running Danger Coffee these days because who knows what you might do. But the idea here is there's enough. What happens? People's inflammation goes down. They start losing weight. They feel much better. They get worried about all the butter they're eating. So then they test their inflammation and it's lower. Inflammation is a greater risk of heart attack than cholesterol. In fact, cholesterol is not a good marker for that at all. So you're going to test those things. And then the big one, get a sex hormone panel. Because if you are 20 and you feel great, or 25 or 30, now you know your numbers. Because when you're 120, you're going to want to match those numbers. And they're not the same for all of us. My former wife, the mother of my kids, her testosterone levels were naturally so high that in medical school, her colleagues were like, why don't you have a goatee? And she's a very feminine person, right? Just that's how her biology works. But if we didn't know who she was, we didn't know her normal levels, you look at her and say, oh my gosh, your testosterone's too high, let's suppress it. You know, you have a problem. She didn't have a problem. She's had a body that worked the way it worked. So knowing your normal range is important. And this is why for you, if your levels are low or your symptoms are there, you may be one of those guys who needs testosterone at 1200 to feel good instead of at 800 to feel good. And we don't know. So if you're not getting the results you want, you bump it up a little bit. And this can just radically change what you do at work, how you show up. And it doesn't make you aggressive unless you really juice like 1970s synthetic bodybuilder things. So the reason we think testosterone and hormone therapy is bad is that when we created the fear of it, we were using synthetic chemicals that weren't even bioidentical hormones. We just we simplify things to the point that it doesn't make sense anymore. So we have our tests. We have inflammation, we have sex hormones. So inflammation is my body good at turning food into energy? The second one is, do I have problems with my sex hormones? And the third one is, how's my thermostat doing? And that is thyroid. Get an advanced thyroid test. Most people listening have low thyroid today. We don't talk about it as much as low testosterone or low sex hormones, but it's also a result of environmental pollution. Thyroid controls energy, hormones control desire, and inflammation controls whether you have power to put into the energy. These are core biohacks. These work for everyone. Now, why might you be low on energy instead of me? Well, I have the genetics that determine that I need more zinc than the average person. So maybe I'm low in energy because I needed extra zinc, and maybe you're low in energy because you're not getting enough saturated fat. Right? Totally different things, but can we measure those things? Yes. Can we then guess what's the most likely thing? Let's tinker with that. And everything I talk about on the blog, on my podcast, in my books, there's a free version because this is how it works. There's a relatively cheap version, and then here's what the crazy billionaires are doing to do it bigger, better, faster, stronger. And what they're doing becomes what everyone does in 20 years.
Wonderful. So if, let's say somebody, because this was a good baseline, let's say somebody's setting a baseline in 20s, that makes sense. But somebody's then, let's say in their 40s or 50s, which is usually the people who would be listening to this, to our audience is usually in their 40s or 50s. What baseline should they be working with, or wherever they are as the baseline?
Exactly the same ones. You just don't have the benefit of knowing where you were when you were 20.
Okay, so there's an average that they should chase? Like, okay, there's an average testosterone, go for this one for now, or...
Are you an average person?
No, I'm trying to understand how to really decide it, because even I don't. No, I agree with you. I'm not.
So I'll just say this. You are not average. Yeah. You are looking for a number that makes you feel good.
Okay. So look for how you feel.
Yeah. What they're going to do, and this is a travesty. They'll say, oh, how old are you? Oh, you're 50? Well, according to normal 50-year-olds, that's all testosterone deficiency, by the way, you're right where you should be. And the only logical answer when someone says that to you, by the way, that's the lab company, not your doctor, is to say, kiss my ass. Like, you should be absolutely offended. Oh, thank you. You're aging just like everyone else. Like, it's gross. It's fine to age. It's not fine to tell people that you're just going to do it. You're helpless. So good for you. You're aging at an average rate and your testosterone is low like it is for everyone else who has ED. It's just not okay. They should say, well, in the range of healthy males, regardless of their age, these are the levels. This is an average level. This is a low level. These are the higher levels. And then you'd say, well, I'm below average. Maybe I'll try getting up to average and I'll see how I do. And you do it and you go to your doctor 3 months later. How do you feel? Like, well, that's so weird. I lost 10 pounds and I got some of my zest back, but I'm kind of plateauing and it's not all the way there. So then if your doctor's good, they're going to say, well, maybe we should look at your thyroid too. Or they'll say, I will put you on a light dose of testosterone. Let's bump you up a bit more. See how you feel at 1,000. And when you get up to 1,000, you're like, man, I'm getting pimples and I tried to have sex with a doorknob. Okay, that's too much. Let's back you down. But you can dial it up and dial it down, right?
Yeah.
And it's so much better when you get that back, because all of a sudden you just have the desire and the drive to say, I'm going to do something that matters. And it could be something as simple as, I'm going to help the lady across the street, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just going to be nice at the end of the day, or I'm going to stand up for my family. Like, these are things that are necessary for humans to do. And libido is just a tiny part of it. And the same thing is true for women. Women who are low on testosterone are also lower on dopamine. They're lower on happiness. Their sex drive is lower as well, right? It's just very different levels. And with women, usually you work with estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, and it's harder to do hormone therapy for women. I like going to functional medicine doctors for that. Guys are simpler. I like everyone to go to functional medicine doctors. I just recognize it might be a little expensive for you. You can buy a book that tells you how to do your hormones. You can buy your hormone tests and you can buy your hormones. So you're also allowed to go to Home Depot and buy, a new toilet and install that. It's probably not as good as the plumber did, but it still works.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's great insight in just how you approach it fundamentally. It's to say, like which we talk about in other areas of our life, but for whatever reason, for our bodies and for aging, it's acceptable to settle. It's acceptable to, you are aging, so you should be like X or Y or Z, which I love the switch that you have is like, you shouldn't be. Just be comfortable and be okay and be asking the question, so why am I aging? And why am I aging the way, like aging and getting mature probably is a great idea, but your body doesn't have to respond in the same way, especially today.
The world today needs people who have the wisdom of aging and the energy of youth. And in order to get there, there's a quote that's at the beginning of Superhuman, my longevity book, and it's, do not go gently into that probably dark night, some kind of night. Mm-hmm. And the idea there is, it is normal for us to mature and age. It is not normal for us to become sick, incompetent, unable to care for ourselves, unable to remember our names, spending the last 20 years of our life, spending our entire life savings with tubes in all of our orifices, wearing diapers and wheelchairs. It is not okay. It is not inevitable. It was never designed that way. And if it happens, it's your fault. You should have done better when you were 40, when you were 50, when you were 20. And you probably are regretting it if you can remember that you didn't do better. And this is happening. It's happened to family members. So you get to pick now. Are you going to go gently? Oh, look, my numbers are average. Oh, no, you don't have to do it. And it's not that expensive. It's also easy to do the free stuff that's in all of the biohacking books I've written. Go to bed on time. Don't eat food late at night. Don't eat a lot of omega-6 seed oils. Lift heavy things once a week for a few minutes. You don't have to work out every day. Go for a 20-minute walk every day. Don't sit under bright LED lights all the time, all day, and never see the sunshine. Like, the list goes on and on. But I am at this point, I'm confused. The calendar says I'm 51 years old. My lab tests say I'm 39 years old. And I keep getting younger. And today, 5.9% body fat. I look like a model with my shirt off. It's almost embarrassing because like I work out 20 minutes a week at Upgrade Labs. I use AI as all my skills, but like, so I'm confused. I fill out a survey, say, how old are you? And I identify as being 39, but it says 51. So I don't know. I find it triggering that they're not respecting my identity as a 39-year-old. Right? I want this for everyone listening to the show. Yeah. Just be like, who cares what the calendar says? I feel so young and maybe even look young.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a funny thing. There's cosmetic treatments. When you say anti-aging longevity, you go back 10, 20 years. Oh, you're going to get plastic surgery. And now it's, no, I'm going to fix my mitochondria and balance my hormones. I'm going to make sure my bones are dense enough. And if not, I'm going to do something about it. But there is a cosmetic aspect, because if your skin is young, it's the largest organ in your body. So taking care of your skin is something people do. And it's an area, frankly, I've struggled with. I have stretch marks all over from being fat. And having an extra 100 pounds of fat means I have extra skin. Like I got extra skin back here. I even have extra skin right here. And so even some people who are prominent in the longevity field, they're pulling fat and injecting it under their eyes. I don't have an issue with that. I haven't done it. I've thought about doing it. And so I'm working on that. But people are saying, well, you don't look like you're 18. Right now, we don't know how to make you look like you're 18 when you're 50. Give us about 7 years. It's happening so fast. The companies are unlocking the keys to controlling cells in the body. Example, I just had gene therapy done for longevity. Mm-hmm. And daveasprey.com/gene therapy is like the info with an interview with one of the people in the world doing this kind of work. And he was inspired by reading my longevity book that said, one day we'll be doing this. I was like, well, why not do it now? So this is something called a follistatin gene therapy. And it was a single injection. The average person who gets that loses 1% body fat. But more importantly, they will become 9 years younger on their lab tests, the average person. And some people, it's been as much as 30 years taken off their age. So that's an emerging technology. And of course I've had that done. I was 6% body fat. Now I'm 5, like I lost a little bit more leanness, almost too lean at this point. And I used to look like the fat guy from Jurassic Park, the computer hacker character. Remember the first one? Yeah. I was a computer hacker from Silicon Valley and I was 300 pounds and I actually did drink Jolt Cola back in the day. So there you go. But to go from there to here, if I can do this, anyone listening to the show can do it, and it's not going to cost you $2 million the way it did me. The vast majority of that was because I had to test stuff out. I had to figure out what worked, and because I was pretty darn sick. Like the first half of that was to get well. The second half was to make myself younger than I am. I don't think it takes $2 million a year, though.
And your book kind of, I'm referencing the book, and I'm sure it's in many other books as well, but Smarter Not Harder is a book that I felt like it was like a playbook. Anybody can read and go, okay, this is what. And I think you even qualify as, this is if you're starting, you can use this hack. If you're mid-level, you can use this hack. If you're like super advanced, you can use this hack. So you've done a phenomenal job at it. And I want to go back into one of the excerpts also from the book, which is kind of a different spin than what I think people are usually seen of Dave. And that is, forgiveness is not condoning something bad. It is also not telling a person that what he or she did is okay, or even that you forgive him or her. Forgiveness is simply letting go of a grudge so that it no longer causes you to lead with reactivity. That's it. And forgiveness is a big part towards, I think, the end of the book, where you kind of lean into little bit more spirituality, which is what I wasn't expecting, especially in a book that is primarily about biohacking, at least based on the perception of it. Now, of course, I've seen you in public settings, so I kind of know you're a spiritual guy, but I wanted to lean into that conversation because I think that's an important part of how you biohack.
At the end of the day, the mitochondria in your body are the antennas that your body uses to detect reality, including the spiritual parts that are very, very real. A lot of people are too sick to really, truly pursue a spiritual path. You can do the work, but the work doesn't produce results because you're biologically corrupted. When you fix your biology, when you meditate, the meditation works better. You want to have a direct connection to the divine, it probably requires extra electricity from your mitochondria to do that, doesn't it? my experience has been, I've always pursued a spiritual path. I was one class away from a minor in religious studies in my undergrad. And I've did ayahuasca in Peru in 1999. I went down there and asked about it, and they said, "You're white." And I said, "Yeah, I noticed." And they said, "No, it's for local people. You'll throw up. It's not fun." I said, "I'm not looking for fun." And now it's a tourist industry, and I think ayahuasca is greatly misused, and it's something I'd be very cautious with. I've traveled to Nepal and Tibet and meditated a long time ago and learned meditation from the masters. I've studied from different lineages. I've done shamanic training. I've trained in traditional Chinese energetic techniques. And the reason I've done all this is I run we'll call it a spiritual tech school, 40 years of Zen in Seattle. Vishen's written about it in both of his books. It was a transformative experience for him. I teach people the science of forgiveness. And it matters because most people think, oh, say you're sorry to your little brother. That's not forgiveness. That's saying you're sorry. You don't have to mean it. What forgiveness is a change of state of your biology so that you're no longer reactionary. And it doesn't mean you change what you think about a situation. It means you change how your body automatically feels about a situation. So when someone does forgiveness work, they can say, here's something that happened to me that was absolutely tragic, and it was really painful. And they can look at you and they're at peace. And if you were to hook electrodes up to them, which I do, you would see that they were at peace. They were experiencing joy and happiness. They didn't lose their state. And when you talk to someone who needs to do forgiveness work, oftentimes even on themselves, they're like, well, something really bad happened to me, and I'm going to tell you about it. Okay, oftentimes that can turn into victim porn. You ever seen that?
Very often.
It happens a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Where the media jumps in like, oh my gosh, look at all this pain and suffering. Now I'll get some eyeballs. You want to be the person who sits there and says, I've had good times, I've had bad times, but I learned how to let go. I learned the most precious part of biohacking of all, the biggest goal of all is I am in charge of my state no matter what's happening in the world around me. It means I can make my body warm or cold. I can be hungry or not hungry. I can have desire, I can not have desire. And something can happen that I enjoy or I don't enjoy, and I don't lose my state. And that means your capacity for service to yourself and to others is unlimited. And if instead you're sitting around going, my metabolism doesn't work, I don't have enough energy in my brain to even catch myself yelling at my kids, then you yell at your kids and go, God, I must be a bad person because I yelled at my kids. By the way, I've yelled at my kids. It happens. But the better you are at being present, the better potential you have to be a profoundly good person. And when you don't have forgiveness, it's very hard to be present. Since I measure people's brainwaves, and I've done this for 1,500 people, I've spent 6 months of my life with the electrodes glued to my head, developing 40 years of Zen. And it's been transformative. And it's allowed me to weather all kinds of entrepreneurial wins and failures and big life changes and all sorts of other things. And, be relatively happy most of the time. I'm not saying I don't experience pain. Of course I do. But it doesn't leave trauma. So ultimately, forgiveness is a tool to turn off trauma. And you can say, Dave, I thought biohacking was the easy path. No, biohacking is the most efficient path. And we're happy to use tools to be more efficient than you can do without tools, which is a big difference between, some traditions. So what would you do if you really wanted to be powerful? Well, the first step would be do a better job of making energy, because having more energy would be helpful for being powerful. Mm-hmm. And the second thing you'd want to do is you'd want to say, where am I wasting energy? If you're wasting energy thinking about what's for lunch all the time, you should probably address that. In fact, in one of my books, about a third of people's thoughts are about food.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Like literally, how many times is that popping into your head? I don't think about food unless I haven't had it for a couple of days. It's amazing to be free of that as a former, very, very hungry, eat 6 times a day, obese person. But after that, Someone says something that's mildly critical in a meeting and you can't sleep all night and you're losing your mind over it, right? Or someone cuts you off in traffic and you're riled up all day. Maybe you should stop wasting energy on that so you can use that energy to make testosterone or to fold proteins better or to figure out an act of kindness, to do something that's valuable. And this is why forgiveness work is fundamental to biohacking. It's because you're wasting energy that you could have put towards improving yourself or others, and you're just doing it on punching yourself in the face. Holding a grudge is really expensive. You don't have to do it. The thing that's really, really frustrating, though, you're not going to know you're holding a grudge. They're invisible because grudges feel like reality, right? Person cuts you off in traffic. It feels like this. You know, they made you angry. They don't respect you. The real story is they cut you off in traffic because they were on the way to the hospital. You don't know. Like, there is no real story unless you were inside the guy's brain and asked him, you know, what was going on. So it's all made up. So the path of biohackers, once they get their basic energy back, if they're doing this kind of work, it's like, first, maybe I could develop empathy for other people. And this starts to sound a lot like Buddhism, and there are elements of all world things in all personal development. So the first thing is empathy. I can feel other people's pain, right? This is good. So you're at the gym and someone's lifting wrong and you, hey man, that's going to your elbow. Let me help you out. Like, we're nice. Problem with empathy is if you have empathy and you're looking around, you're disabled. Because there's a lot of suffering in the world. By the way, there's less suffering now on average than there has been in all of history. If you look at the whole world, there's a lot of people in poverty and all that stuff. There's also really bad stuff happening in Switzerland, and there's people who are actively plotting to take away your currency and your rights and all that kind of stuff. That used to be a conspiracy theory. Now it's just obvious. But, okay, you could be all worried about that stuff, or you could say, all right, I'm going to step out of empathy and into compassion. And compassion is interesting because you don't have to feel everyone's pain. You can automatically, without having to do anything, just wish well for others. So now you see someone in pain, you go, I hope that person's okay. And you can choose to help the person or to not help the person based on what's right to do in that situation, but you don't have to feel their pain all day. So compassion is greater than empathy. But the greatest state is equanimity, which is the ability to control your state no matter what's happening in the world around you. And biohacking can take you there. And there's another word for equanimity that is used in Buddhism, and it's actually enlightenment. And people who take Buddhist vows are vowing to hold off from full enlightenment until they've brought everyone else along with them, which is a very strong spiritual path. The kind of equanimity I'm talking about, maybe it's the same as enlightenment. I don't think I'm enlightened, so how would I know? But what I'm talking about is the ability to stay in the absolute highest spiritual state you've ever experienced all the time. And that is an absolute goal of biohacking. Unless your goal is to be a balloon animal, in which case do that. It's your life. You can do anything you want. I just want you to have tools that work. And if you want to be present all the time, you're going to do forgiveness work. And if you want to figure out how to measure presence, let's have a conversation about neuroscience, because I do that. And I can show you over and over forgiveness work done through the reset process that's in the book, the one that Vishen talks about in his books as well, the one from 40 Years of Zen. It makes people more present because it stops your brain from ruminating and worrying about things that are no longer necessary.
Beautiful. And I did 40 Years of Zen as well, by the way, and it was a wonderful experience. It was absolutely life-changing. So highly recommend for anybody who wants to consider that. One of the things that you talk about in the book, and it's kind of correlated to forgiveness, and I want to get into it because it's also something that if you can't afford 40 Years of Zen, you could at least consider this as a path. And I think you call it the 3 steps to spiritual recovery, which is create automatic kindness and forgiveness, activate a spiritual reset, and advance from forgiveness to acceptance. Can you just expand on that for people who are listening to this episode and going, well, I don't know how to get to 40 Years of Zen right now?
So creating automatic kindness is the idea of compassion. And what you do there is you learn how to do the reset process. It's in the book. And I don't think it's effective to go through and take several minutes to try and explain it, because it's better when you read it and experiment with it. But what you're going to do is you're going to learn how to do the reset process enough that you can turn it on. And when you're done doing this a few times, there's a sensation that happens in your chest, in your heart. You know what I'm talking about when you're at 40 years of Zen? It's an opening sensation.
Yeah.
And that's what forgiveness feels like. And you realize, oh, forgiveness is a state. And if you can, curl your bicep and realize, oh, I can flex my bicep even if I'm not curling. Oh, like that's different. It's a thing that you can do with your heart or with your energy. And when you learn how to do that, when you're just walking around the world, you're doing that. And then when something is triggering to you, instead of automatically going, I'll take you down, you do that. And then you can decide whether you want to take them down or not. It doesn't mean you can't. It just means that you chose to do it and they didn't provoke you to do it. Now you're in charge. You can still be a warrior. This works fine. And then what was that's the automatic kindness.
The spiritual reset.
Activating a spiritual reset is this type of forgiveness work. You can, however, do this kind of forgiveness work on yourself. And this is the big missing piece. And my next book will go into more details on this. So let's say you were bullied in school. There's a great chance that when an adult has bullying-like behaviors, you drop right into the mindset that you felt when you were that age. We're wired to do that because it's a survival thing. And there's nothing good or bad about that. It just works for our species. It's dysfunctional, though, to do that in life. So once you learn what's happening, you can forgive the bullies. But if you don't forgive yourself for either standing up and getting your ass kicked or for not standing up, whatever you're mad at yourself for, I can't tell you what it is. It's the idea that you forgive the other, you forgive the self. And when you do that, you can achieve a spiritual reset where, oh my gosh, the sense of freedom that comes from that is so profound that the next time an adult comes in with bullying behavior, you could just look at them and just be like, is everything all right at home?
Which I think is also leaning into the third thing, which is advance from forgiveness to acceptance.
Yeah. These are hard words because all of these states were trying to use language to describe a sensation in the body. Forgiveness isn't a thought. Forgiveness is a thing. It's a state. And acceptance is a state too. So you've got to also accept there is evil in the world. Okay? There are people doing bad things. How am I going to do good things? Right? And that kind of acceptance is far more powerful than complaining. Right? And when you see yourself as a victim, which causes complaining, people who see themselves as victims have not practiced forgiveness on whoever wronged them. And sometimes it is wrong. Guys, Monsanto is evil, right? I'm not happy about that. But I am not triggered by that. I'm doing something about it. It's a very big difference. And doing something isn't complaining. People who are stuck in a victim loop like that, in studies, are twice as likely to judge others harshly if they don't follow the rules. And they call for far harsher penalties. So now we have clinical evidence from neuroscience that shows that identifying yourself as a victim turns you into a Karen. And you don't want to be that. So what about acceptance? There are bad people doing bad things. What are the things I will focus on? And will I be triggered and derailed by everything else? Am I going to stop going to school and complain a lot? Or am I going to say, I'm going to go to school and study the problem. I'm going to choose this part of the problem and this is my mission and I'm going to fix it. All we need is 15% of people doing that and we will transform the world. But if those same 15% of people complain, throw tomato soup on paintings behind glass and things like that, that's not functional. So your job is to not be triggered by big evil, but to do something about it, and to not be triggered by big complaining. And you don't have to do something about it. Your job is to say, what am I here to do? I'm going to do that, and no one and no thing on this planet can take me off my path. That is spiritual power.
It's beautiful. And I think there's one thing that I really appreciate about you, and that is every time that I've seen you, or I've seen you on stage, or I've seen you on social media, or seen you in person as well, it feels like that you are fully aligned with who you are, like the most authentic version of a person can be. And it's inspiring because it feels like you don't care what I think, what somebody else thinks. You're just like, this is my best version that you're going to get. And this is what it is. You like it, you don't like it, it's all cool. And I think that's one of the things that all of us want to develop. So my question to you is, what's the path to that? And if this was a part of it.
The path to that is suffering greatly, to be perfectly honest. Learning to face criticism is something it's just difficult. Criticism feels like you're going to die, especially when you're a little kid. I watch it, when I do work with teenagers. It's just so painful. Even some people I work with, you say one thing like, "Hey, there was a mistake here," and like, "Ah!" and they just lose it, right? Well, we all have that. We'll call it inner child or part of you like that. I do my best to have compassion for people. The downside, though, of having compassion for people is that you may also see the best in people. So if Charles Manson comes in and you see the best in him and you don't see the serial killer in him, you might have an issue there. So one of the more advanced things that I'm still working on is called discernment, right? So you can have compassion for everyone, but that guy's a snake and I don't want that person in my space. So I've noticed in the world of biohacking, there's people who have copied every one of my blog posts and everyone who's been on my show and copied my products even, and they're stalking me, right? Am I going to go to a conference with that person? No, I'm not, because I have discernment. And if I hire someone and they don't behave with others, I'm going to remove them from the company, because discernment. I'm taking care of the people who are doing the work, who are on mission, right? And I have compassion for people who aren't doing what they said they would do, but I don't want them in my space. And that's just a place of peace. So if you're looking for a biohack for how to face criticism, this would come from one of the podcast episodes. And maybe it's not even a biohack, it's just a way of thinking. A lot of this is a way of thinking. The biohack is learn how to change your state, but not your thinking. So there's two. One of them is the path through understanding, and ask yourself, is it true? And how do you know? And this is more like Louise Hay kind of work, but there's probably a Mind Valley quest based on that stuff.
Yeah, our coaching program, one of the elements is about how to really ask the question of, is it true?
Yeah, and you find that most of the things you believe are true aren't. So that's just an awareness trick. I had someone the other day at work, she said, I was told something. And I said, oh, we don't actually use passive language here. So who told you? She goes, well, and she thought about it for a minute. She goes, actually, no one told me that. I'm like, so you told yourself that? She goes, yeah. But to her, it felt like someone told her that, so she couldn't do something. And she realized it was entirely self-imposed, but it was invisible until she asked the question. So that's one thing. You are doing things to yourself that you cannot see, and your body doesn't want you to see them. That's why you can't. The second thing is a biohack. It's called heart rate variability. And if you have an Oura Ring or Whoop, it'll tell you heart rate variability in the morning. But you can also buy a device that'll let you measure heart rate variability coming off your ear. It's called a heart map device. It costs a couple $100. And if you do that, you'll actually feel yourself switch your state from relaxed to fight or flight. It's a subtle shift in your energy field, and you play a game on your iPhone. Breathe so it turns green. And then, like, damn thing won't turn green, and it won't work, right? So then you realize you have to breathe and do something. And that something, I don't have words for it, it's relax your heart. And when you can do this consciously, now you know the feeling of the shift. It takes about 6 weeks of training, the shift between I will kill and I'm at peace. That shift is invisible to us all the time until you're trained, right? So if you feel yourself going, oh my God, someone criticized me, I'm losing my mind. Well, you might just, if you have that skill, you might just shift back. Or tapping is another thing that works really well. My friend Nick Ortner has been running a tapping summit for like 16 years. And there's places you can tap, and you can tap here and you can say things. Now, I'll be the first to say, tapping is the stupidest looking thing I've ever seen. It should not work. And if I was prone to anger, I would be angry that it does work, because I don't want it to work. Okay. And I've resisted it. I've worked with great gurus and therapists and people, and every now and then there's times when tapping is the thing that works. And the reason tapping works is it's a direct conversation with subsystems in your body that normally don't hear you. You're not supposed to know what's going on. So you just say it. Even though blah, 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 I love and accept myself. And you're tapping and you're going, I look so stupid. I feel so stupid. This thing can't possibly work. It doesn't matter. It still works. And it works way more than it should, but not always. So that's a neat biohack. So heart rate variability, tapping, and is it true?
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I think that's one of the things that I know a lot of our students definitely struggle with. In the modern world, as you get more data and more feedback, sometimes the feedback that you don't even desire because everybody's an opinion wants to give you one, it becomes harder and harder to stay present to what's real for you.
There's another piece of information in there that I wish I had picked up on earlier. It's your body is going to feel like you're dying a lot because it worries about dying all the time. So anytime there's something you don't like, it's like, it freaks out. You just have to ask yourself, am I really dying? Because it feels that way. And if you're not, you can laugh at yourself a little bit. It's like, look at my silly body respond that way because, someone did something. And it's like you're riding around in this meat suit. It keeps reacting this way. And it's kind of hilarious. Like, am I a rabbit? No. And part of the knowledge of this that you learn as a biohacker is that you're just not your body. You can leave your body. There's 8 different ways to do astral travel. Like, you ride around in your body, but your body is a very primitive instrument and you're less primitive than your body. And it's not going to do everything you want it to do. But it has its own rhythms. It has its own consciousness, actually. Your mitochondria are conscious and they are not you. They just make you feel a bunch of stuff. So they can manipulate you. You can manipulate them back. That's called biohacking.
Wonderful. Taking a slight detour. Let's do one selfish question. A selfish question is basically, I have a question for pretty much myself, and I would love to have a take from you on that. So I turned 40 this year. I love going to the gym. I love walks, but I'm a vegetarian. Not vegan, vegetarian, which means I do take milk and stuff. I'm 13% body fat. Give me 5 things I should do to get visible abs, more muscle, while maintaining my longevity markers. I think you've given a few already, but still.
Sure. Just eat steak would be the first one.
I'm vegetarian. And I'm sure you don't want me to eat the fake steak that Beyond Meat will sell me.
That was totally a joke. I will say you can be a reasonably healthy vegetarian. There are substantial problems that come on a vegetarian diet if you're not very aware of it. A traditional Indian diet, I'm assuming you're talking about.
Yeah.
If you do it the way your grandmother or maybe great-grandmother did, you eat ghee. That's necessary. And you eat a lot of cheese and eggs. So you get your protein and you get the right fats and you don't eat vegetable oil. If you're in the US and you're Indian, you're probably going to go to vegan restaurants. Those are toxic for you because they use bad oils. The incidence of diabetes amongst vegetarians is really high, and seed oils are a part of that. You go back 1,000 years in India, it wasn't that big of a problem, even though the diet was largely the same. This goes back to testosterone. Your testosterone's low because you're a vegetarian. This is a common problem, right? So the fact that your doctor knows you're a vegetarian and still won't give you testosterone, that's 2 strikes, man. But
yeah, I'm about to fire them anyways. I kind of am searching for the next one anyways.
Okay.
We're talking to our friends about it. Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
And I think it's okay to politely and say, you know what, doc, I've decided to move practitioners because you wouldn't give me testosterone. They should get feedback, right? Just not angry feedback, but just, and they may say, well, all these people, how dare they think that they're using Dr. Google? Well, it's because they actually have educated themselves, right? They might not always agree with you. Yeah. So partner more with your people. But you need 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. It needs to be animal protein. That means eggs, cheese, whey protein for you. That will rapidly give you what you want, right? It's just hard to do because as a vegetarian, plant-based industrial protein powders do not work. They do not count. So it's 1 gram per pound of body weight of animal protein or 2 grams per pound of body weight of plant-based protein. You'll get the results you want, but you'll get so many inflammatory things and heavy metals from the plant-based proteins that you probably won't like your life, and you'll probably be like farting on yourself. It'll be terrible. So you might not want to go down that path. This is just a fundamental issue in human health and nutrition. There's companies out there trying to sell you pea protein and brown rice protein. Because it's protein, it must be the same thing as whey protein or egg protein or chicken. It's not the same, and your body knows. And it doesn't absorb the same. It doesn't have the same muscle building effect. So that's number 1. Number 2, you need to not eat after the sun goes down. This is circadian timing. And you can intermittent fast. You don't have to do it every day, but 3 or 4 days a week is good. And that means probably skipping breakfast, or better yet, a late breakfast and a very early dinner. It's just if you have kids and you have a social life, you're not going to have a dinner at 3:30 in the afternoon. It's ridiculous. That's why I've been telling people forever. Have coffee, maybe danger coffee, with some MCT and butter if you want. You don't have to do that in the morning. And wait a few hours before you have breakfast. And now your body's had time to have an empty stomach. That can make a big difference. Third thing that you'd want to do. Once or twice a week, you need to lift heavy things. And you can do it at the gym. You can do it with body weight. And if you read Smarter, Not Harder, there's all kinds of ways that are much faster than just lifting up heavy things, but weight-bearing exercise. And it doesn't have to be fancy. You can do squats, you can do push-ups, you can do pull-ups, and you can do anything that lets you basically work your back, basically a row. If you do those 4 things, you'll have a good amount of metabolic activity. If there's an Upgrade Labs near you, we have AI-powered machines that do all that for you. It's one machine does all of that, so you get your muscle put on 3 to 5 times faster than just lifting. And that can be magical when you look at just the stimulation from that. But if you do that every day, it won't work. A lot of people make the mistake of saying, well, if some is good, more is better. So I'll just lift every day and I'll do cardio every day. That was me when I was in my early 20s, not losing weight because of overtraining. So more protein, saturated fat, better quality sleep because you didn't eat so late, dim the lights at night, and look at your thyroid levels. They're probably off. The vegetarian diet can do that, and so does fluoride in water and things like that. And look at your testosterone levels and then fix them. And the next time we talk in 6 months, you'll just say, it's nice, I grew some abs, but I feel so good. That's what this is about. How your body looks is not that relevant, especially if you're already partnered with someone. If you have another 20 pounds, but you're going to live another 500 years, you'd probably do that and it would be okay, right? So it's not about looking good. That's a side effect of feeling good. It's very easy to look great and feel like crap. Ask any fitness competitor. Like, I've never looked so good and felt so bad. So don't target looks, target feelings.
Thank you for that. And good thing I accept the hitting the protein levels, which is, like you said, incredibly hard.
Yeah.
I think I'm able to do most of it. For that matter, do most of it. So
Good.
And of course, change my doctor, which has been, I think, the big lesson of today.
You might
Fire
need
your
some
doctor
zinc.
faster.
Zinc and B12 deficiencies are common too. Yeah.
So let's ask ourselves some questions. And this is just, is this a biohack or not?
All right.
Okay. Ozempic.
Everything's a biohack. Let's face it. Changing the environment around you or inside of you to control your biology. Ozempic.
It's more to get your comment on Ozempic. Let's just
All
say it that way.
right. Here's the deal with Ozempic. Ozempic is a miracle drug because being fat will kill you. So losing weight is a really good thing. However, if you use Ozempic wrong, it will break you. So it's only a miracle drug if you do 2 things when you're on Ozempic. Number 1, you must get 1 gram per pound of target body weight of protein. And I don't care if you're nauseous, you chug it in a smoothie and you do it every day religiously as you inject your Ozempic. And a couple times a week, you do the 4 exercises I talked about: squats, push-ups, pull-ups. If you're not going to do those, don't take Ozempic because it can be really dangerous. If you do those things, you're going to maintain your muscle mass. Most people on Ozempic lose their muscle mass, which is dangerous. But you know what's more dangerous? Being obese. So if I was 300 pounds, I would use Ozempic. I have taken it 1 time to do a podcast about it. I felt like I was morning sick the whole time. I didn't want to eat anything. I lost muscle mass during that week. It was gross. But if I was 300 pounds, I would have done it so much. I believe it's dangerous to take it without enough protein and without enough exercise, but it's a miracle drug if you do those things.
Let's get your take on juice cleanse.
Juice cleanses are the dumbest thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. You're getting a bunch of sugar, and usually you're getting a huge amount of plant toxins. In fact, spinach and kale have so much oxalate in them that there's a case report of someone dying after a 10-day spinach kale juice cleanse. Your body can handle about 5 grams of oxalate a day. A large spinach kale smoothie with beets and almond juice can have 1 gram. You do 5 large smoothies a day, you're probably going to get kidney stones. There's nothing cleansing about it. you might as well just punch yourself in the kidney. You want to do a cleanse? There's a very old way of doing it. It's called a fast. You drink water every day with some salt in it until you're done. That's a cleanse. Take some activated charcoal. That's a cleanse. Juice cleanses? Just eat Twinkies. It's the same thing.
Intermittent fasting.
I wrote the first major book, The Bulletproof Diet, on intermittent fasting, which kicked off a big revolution in it. I'm a huge fan of intermittent fasting. Problem is, a lot of people overfast, and that's why I wrote my second book on fasting. Guys, if you're tweaked, if you're at the wrong time of your cycle, if you just lifted heavy, if you just flew around the world, if you're getting sick, have breakfast. Don't have sugar for breakfast, have some meat. Or in your case, a bunch of eggs. But same difference. So this is how it works. Fasting is a stimulation. It's a stress on the body. Don't put more stress on the body when the body's already stressed. Use it to help yourself recover. But when you need aggressive recovery, have some breakfast.
Peptides.
Peptides are some of the most powerful biohacks. They're small protein fragments. And these little protein fragments are signals to your body to make a change. That's the definition of biohacking. Change the environment around you, change the environment inside you. That's changing the environment inside of you so that your body's, here's a signal, I should do this. And it's just injecting instructions to change. So things like BPC, they speed healing. And there's others that extend telomeres to make you live longer. And peptides are not drugs. And anytime, anywhere on the planet, a regulatory authority tries to take away your right to peptides, that's a sign the regulatory authority is working for Big Pharma. Peptides are a human right.
Stem cells.
Stem cells are one of the things that I'm a huge fan of. I have probably had more stem cells than anyone else alive, I'm guessing. I've had my bone marrow taken out twice, my fat taken out 2 or 3 times, and billions of stem cells injected in every joint in my body, my hair, face, my reproductive system, everywhere else you could possibly put them, multiple times. And I've done at least 50 vials of exosomes. They can be absolutely amazing. However, there are places now starting to say, well, we're going to have like low cost umbilical cells available at drive-by facilities. I don't think that's a good idea. There are issues with umbilical cells. They can heal you, but I have seen people unable to walk for 6 months after umbilical cells. The safest stem cells are your own stem cells, or something called V cells that you can extract from your body. So I'm a huge fan of those. And I'm also a huge fan of something called iPSC edited stem cells. I wrote about those in Superhuman. They're just becoming available, but you have to leave the country.
Mm-hmm. Living longer by being vegetarian.
There is zero evidence that living longer comes from being vegetarian or not vegetarian. Living longer comes from doing things that reduce inflammation. And the idea that a plant-based diet will make you live longer is not supported by science, despite the Blue Zones documentary. I deeply respect Dan Buettner, who made it. He and I are both interested in extending human life. When I asked him about it, he said, I don't know why beans work. I just know a lot of people eat a lot of beans, therefore I'm gonna eat a lot of beans. That's not the level of scientific rigor that I would want. For instance, different beans have very, very different levels of oxalic acid, which is not gonna make you live longer because it takes out your kidneys. Black beans are different than pinto beans. In fact, black beans are probably not really good for you. So what's going on here? I think there's a lack of science in this, and there's huge money from animal rights terrorist groups who are happy to tell you it's healthy because all they care about is making sure there's no animals on the planet, because if we have no agriculture, there won't be any animals, but there's that. And there's some religious front groups going back to early 1900s, Seventh-day Adventists, and big food companies are all over the vegan diet. Like, oh, look, I can charge $6 for a bag of flour instead of a bag of beef jerky. This is a great deal. So I will tell you, if you want to be vegetarian, do it. If you want to be vegan, you are putting your life, and especially the health of your children, at risk. It is not worth it. I was a vegan. I was a devout raw vegan. I juiced, I sprouted, I was highly educated, and it gave me oxalic acid poisoning. Like, I got all the razor sharp crystals in the joints, all the things that happen, and it is so not worth it. And most people, 80% who go vegan, stop doing it. So no, a vegan diet or a plant-based diet is nonsense. It's what we feed peasants when we can't afford to feed them meat. This is the history of it. Vegetarian is a lot more nuanced. If you are vegetarian and you're eating enough of your ancestral foods, which will include dairy and eggs, you can do it.
Yeah, because it's an interesting thing, just contextually. So I have 4 grandmas that lived till 93, 94, active, like
Awesome.
not on bed or anything like that. Fully active in community, very present, walking every day, doing housework every day. All lived over 90, 100% vegetarian, not even eggs. And I also don't eat eggs, but basically that's a culture that I come from
And you're doing
called
what?
Jainism.
Oh, you're Jane. I know
Yeah,
Jane. And
yeah,
in fact,
yeah.
you guys are right about garlic and onions too.
Yeah, so
100%.
no garlic, no
Yeah,
onion, no
I don't do that
potatoes.
stuff. Yeah.
Just basic, very
Fist bump.
eat before.
I'm basically as Jane as you can get and be a white dude, because I don't eat any of that stuff either because it actually isn't that good for you. So
Yeah, and they would also always eat before sunset. Like basically everything that you said.
there's huge wisdom in the Jain faith. Huge wisdom.
Yeah, and they all lived very functional
Yeah.
and died very peacefully. Like, like they knew it was coming. They pretty much told everyone that I want to see everyone before I pass. Like literally one of the aunts just passed, grandma's just passed. And she literally had the whole family there, met them, and once the family was gone 5 days later, she passed.
That's how life is supposed to be, and I love it that your family's still practicing that, and I've seen it in my family as well when people know when the end is coming. In where I've ended up now, I grew up, I'm a computer scientist, Westerner, atheist, agnostic guy. I think the way you come into the world, the quality of your birth and the quality of your death are the 2 most important things, and I look at them as the same thing. So you can celebrate someone's death as much as you celebrate their birth.
I think the key lesson I am taking, and everybody will take many different lessons out of it, is that if your container is not well taken care of, which is your body is not well taken care of, you will find it harder to change everything else because your body is not on your side.
Much harder. And also understand that the mind-based path is the long and hard path. What you learn over time is that the body sees and responds to reality in the window before your mind even knows reality happened. And you can prove this with neuroscience, and I write about this in Smarter Not Harder. Your operating system does stuff that you don't know it does.
Yeah.
Right? And if you realize that, then you can start just going directly into the felt sense of the world and changing that. And that can be in partnership with the mind path. But if you're doing just a mind path, you realize you're missing where the interface with reality is actually happening. So dropping into the body, which is faster and easier through biohacking. At least like there's breath work. There's all these different things that can help you do it. And all of those are just ways to better connect to reality, but you should have working cells to do that.
Yeah. And the second big lesson I'm taking today is personalization. Remember, you are individual, your body is unique. It is going to respond to things differently. You got to find your own markers. You got to find your own journey. You got to find your own knowledge base, if I may, to be able to really be informed, to make the decisions if people that you're partnering with are not giving you good advice because you're not feeling good. That's another thing that I am taking away from this conversation. Now, before we close out our conversation, I have 2 last questions for you. One is, one belief you would want to offer to someone you care deeply about.
I would offer this for anyone I care deeply about. It's that you have way more control over your biology and over your state than you think you do. I want everyone to understand that when you wake up in the morning, you have absolute control over how your body feels. You probably don't know what gives you control. You don't know where the knobs and the levers and the switches are, but they're there. And you can change your state like that once you know how.
What have you seen people believe that is absolutely untrue?
Most recently, I've seen people believe that it's okay to spray an antibiotic herbicide on hundreds of millions of acres of farmland and think there's no effect on biology. I'm talking about glyphosate and atrazine and other things like that. It's not okay. And anyone who believes it's okay now is seriously traumatized or brainwashed. I've seen lately people believe that protein from wheat or crickets is the same as protein from milk or eggs or chickens. It is not the same in any way, shape, or form. I've seen people believe that exercise makes you lose weight, and I believed it very fundamentally. No, food makes you lose weight. Exercise makes you have some muscles, but you can lose all the weight you want without exercise. It's just not that good of an idea. And mostly, maybe not mostly, but another thing that people believe that raising awareness is doing something. The most toxic thing that you can do to someone is you can tell them that they have a say in something through taking an action when they don't really have say. You give them fake control. So protesting is fake control. It doesn't do anything. I'm not even convinced that voting is real control. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I suspect that if it was, they'd probably make it illegal if it changed anything. We shall see. But the reality here is, ask yourself, is it true? And if you can do that, you'll avoid that toxic belief where I'm going to do this because it's going to change things. You can do that for the rest of your life with your diet, and you can die with heart disease and be obese. And you can do this with everything in your life. Or you can ask yourself, is it real? Is it working? Am I seeing the progress I expect? If not, do something different.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Dave. What would be some of the best places to continue to follow your work?
Go to daveasprey.com, 3,000 blog posts, 1,200 podcasts, and go to any social media platform, say Instagram, dave.asprey, 1 million followers and growing, and lots of knowledge and wisdom. It's all free.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dave.